Time now for an updated market outlook for investors. We're joined once again by Seth Allen from Cadence Financial at Raymond James. A year ago, the markets were in a pretty bad place. So fast forward now to today, how are things changed?
Well, I think a year ago, we were seeing markets sell off over 20%, and investors at that time were thinking, are we going to a bear market? Is there a recession coming up? This year, we've seen the exact opposite, where we've seen markets going to record highs, despite some of the geopolitical events out there right now. And the bigger thing right now for investors is that emotion of fear of missing out.
The FOMO.
Or FOMO, yeah, where people get this worry that if they're not invested, somehow they're going to miss out on returns. So.
Okay. Last time you were on, we talked about the Canadian election. We were wondering what kind of impact it would have short term. Didn't really seem to affect the markets all that much. So give us an update on that, and then also some other situations happening in our country that could be affecting the markets.
Well, I think if you look over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Canadian markets go to new highs, in fact, an all-time new high. And so in the short term, obviously the election didn't really play a role in terms of what investors' outlook was. But I think that if you're a Canadian investor right now, particularly looking at what's going on with the CNN strike, I think that's a bigger issue because CNN is seen as the backbone of the Canadian economy in terms of transporting goods across the country for export, whether it's the United States or to Asia. And when you see, farmers and, propane producers not being able to get their goods to market, maybe not right now, but if this continues on for a little bit longer, it could spell some trouble for companies operating in Canada.
Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned the States, because as a layman, I would think what's going on down there with the President Donald Trump impeachment proceedings would have a disastrous effect on the markets, but you're saying that's not so much the case.
Well, I think that when we see the whole impeachment inquiry that's been going on lately, I mean, you can't open a paper or turn on a TV without seeing something about it. But the reality is it doesn't really affect markets, and it doesn't really affect what companies are going to be doing in terms of their outlook and whether their earnings or their sales and things like that. And one thing I do say to clients sometimes or often is, your decision to buy iPhone next year is not going to be dependent upon whether Trump gets impeached or not. So I think if you were to kind of take that out across various companies, you'll see why the markets are going to new highs despite this geopolitical issues going on right now.
Really good analogy there. What about US-China trade relations at the moment?
Well, that is something that one has been, as an investor, you would have been watching over the last year and a bit. I think that from a outcome standpoint, if we don't see a trade deal done, that's obviously going to spell trouble for companies, because when you have to pay more for your imports or you're getting taxed on your exports, that obviously affects the earnings that you have as a company and your sales. So as much as it's a geopolitical event, it is something that does longer term, I think, affect companies and their ability to operate.
You talk about headlines. I mean, we see all the uprising, the protests in Hong Kong. That must be having an effect as well.
Well,
right?
yeah, I think there's something that's just adding to the issue between China and the United States, because as much as it's a dispute between the two of them, it does affect everybody else in the world, because trade is interconnected and global. And when you see something going on with Hong Kong, they are their own economy. And obviously, if you're an investor in Hong Kong right now, it hasn't been too good for you, given what's been going on with the protests.
A lot of complex and connected issues to get through. We don't have time for all of them today, but if people want some advice, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can contact us at cadencefinancialgroup.com. That's www.cadencefinancialgroup.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Seth.
Thank you.